The old Toyota Hilux shuddered as it left the cracked tarmac and bumped onto the gravel track, coughing dust into the thin mountain air. Layla gripped the door handle, pretending the jolt in her stomach was from the altitude, not the fear. On the ridge above them, jagged rocks cast long shadows, and beyond that the Hindu Kush rose like a wall of broken teeth. "Relax," said Farid, eyes fixed on the narrow road ahead. "We're almost there." "Almost where?" Jens asked from the back seat, his camera clutched to his chest instead of balanced in his lap like usual. "You've said that for the last hour." "The village is called Sire," Farid replied. "The Valley of Darkness. One more bend, then you'll see it." Layla glanced at Jens. The Danish photographer was 27, fresh to Afghanistan, still with that nervous arrogance of someone who thought risk came with a safety net. In Kabul, he'd called this trip career-defining. Up here, under a sky the color of steel and bruised snow clouds, he just looked young. "I still don't understand why he agreed," Layla said. Ex-Taliban commander, wanted by half the government, hiding in some valley with no signal, and he suddenly wants to give interviews? Farid's jaw worked. He didn't suddenly want anything. Men like him don't wake up and decide to trust foreign journalists. Someone pushed him. "Who?" Jens asked. Farid shrugged. "That's what worries me." The wind shifted, bringing the distant thump of a helicopter. They all went quiet, instinctively ducking their heads a fraction. The sound faded as quickly as it had come. Officially, NATO combat operations were over. Unofficially, everyone still listened to the sky. They rounded the bend and the valley opened beneath them, a basin of stone and frost. Mud brick houses clung to the eastern slope, their flat roofs dusted with snow. Smoke rose from a few chimneys in thin, reluctant threads. Terraces of dead, winter-browned fields stepped down to a thin river, half frozen and shining like broken glass. On a hill above the village leaned a crumbling Soviet watchtower, concrete cracked and rust-streaked, as if it regretted still being upright. "That's something," Jens murmured, lifting his camera without thinking. "Don't," Farid snapped. "Not yet. Let them see you first." They rolled into the village at walking pace. Children paused their game with a ragged football. Women pulled scarves tighter and vanished indoors. A ring of men in dark paycalls and padded vests stood outside a low mosque, watching, their faces unreadable. "Smile a little," Layla muttered. "You're the friendly one." Farid didn't smile. He pulled the Hilux to a stop. For a moment, no one moved. The engine coughed into silence and the quiet rushed in, all frost and staring eyes. An older man with a white beard stepped forward, his stride slow but certain. He didn't offer his hand. He looked straight at Layla, then at the notebook on her knee, the camera strap on her shoulder. In Pashto, he said something low that made a couple of the younger men smirk. "What?" she whispered. "He says," Farid murmured, "the foreign woman rides in front like a man. He wants to know if you are brave or foolish." Layla forced a thin smile. "Tell him I'm cold, and that we're late." Farid translated with a few edits of his own. The old man's expression barely changed, but the smirks disappeared. "I am Haji Bashir," he said in halting Dari for their benefit. "You will not film our women. You will not film inside the mosque. You will ask questions only to the commander. You will leave before night." "Of course," Layla said. "The commander is here?" Bashir's gaze lingered on her face, as if he already knew the story she wanted to write and didn't think much of it. "He has been here longer than any of us. He has been expecting you." The way he said it made her skin tighten under her jacket. The message confirming the interview had come through 3 different channels, passed from fixer to fixer until the original sender was just an alias in an encrypted app. No request for money. No conditions. Just a set of coordinates, a time, and a line. He wants to talk before he disappears. Farid cut the engine fully. The dashboard lights died. Overhead, clouds thickened around the mountain peaks. "Layla," he said softly, switching back to Dari so Jens wouldn't catch every word. "Last chance. If we turn around now, we make it to the main road before dark." She thought of the email from her London editor, words polite but desperate. "We can't justify keeping you on retainer if you're not bringing something that cuts through." She thought of the names on the journalist memorial in Kabul, etched too close together. Of the way war stories blurred into one another unless you found the one that still had teeth. "We've come this far," she said. "If it feels wrong, we leave. But we at least hear him out." A boy of maybe 12 appeared at Bashir's side. Skinny, sandals without socks despite the cold, a grey coat too big for his frame. In his right hand, he held a cheap Chinese walkie-talkie. The red LED was already glowing. "He will take you," Bashir said. "The commander is in the tower." Layla's eyes climbed the slope to the tilted concrete stump on the hill. For a second, she thought she saw a figure at the broken parapet, watching them through binoculars. When she blinked, the parapet was empty. The boy raised the radio to his mouth, spoke a few words too quietly for them to catch. A burst of static answered. He listened, then looked at Layla. "They say hurry," he told her in simple Dari, "before the weather closes the road." The path to the tower was steeper than it looked from below. The boy took them up a zigzag of frozen mud and loose stones, moving with the easy balance of someone who'd been climbing it his whole life. Layla's boots slipped twice. Jens, puffing behind her, nearly went down on his knees when a rock skidded away under his foot. "So this guy," Jens said between breaths, "he fought Americans?" "He fought everyone," Farid replied. "Soviets first, then the warlords, then the Taliban again, then the government. Men like him never stop fighting. They just change flags." "Why would he talk to us now?" Jens asked. Farid didn't answer. The boy's radio crackled again, a hiss and a pop that sounded for a heartbeat like distant gunfire. A thin voice came through, distorted, overlapping itself, as if 2 people were speaking on nearly the same frequency. The boy frowned and turned the volume down. "What did he say?" Layla asked. "Nothing," the boy said. "Just checking." They reached the tower. Up close, it looked worse. Soviet concrete, rusted rebar showing through the cracks, graffiti in Cyrillic half-buried under layers of Pashto slogans and bullet scars. The door was a sheet of dented metal hanging at an angle, held in place by a padlock the size of Layla's fist. The padlock was open. The boy pushed the door with his shoulder. It scraped on the rough floor, shrieking loud enough to wake ghosts. Cold air breathed out from the darkness inside, carrying the stale smell of damp, cigarettes, and old sweat. "After you," Jens muttered, flicking on his headlamp. They stepped into a circular room with bare concrete walls etched by time and boredom. Old Soviet slogans flaked from the plaster. Newer scrawls in Pashto and Dari climbed over them, prayers and insults and dates. Spent shell casings glittered in the dust. A blackened ring on the floor marked years of small fires. At the far side of the room sat 3 men around a brazier, their faces lit from below by the weak orange glow. All wore woolen paycalls and patched jackets. Only one stood when they entered. He was smaller than Layla had expected. In her mind, ex-Taliban commander had become some mountain of a man with a lion's beard and booming voice. This man was in his 50s, maybe, thin rather than strong, his beard streaked white and his right arm held close to his side as if it hurt. His eyes, though, were sharp and young, taking in all three of them in a glance that felt like a searchlight. "Peace be upon you," he said in Pashto. "And upon you," Farid replied. He gestured. "This is Layla, from Bosnia. This is Jens, from Denmark. They write and make pictures for big newspapers." The man's gaze returned to Layla. "And you, Farid? Who do you work for now?" "I work for whoever still cares what happens here," Farid said lightly. "Which is not many." The man smiled at that, a quick flash of teeth. "Sit. There will be tea." They lowered themselves onto thin cushions against the wall. Jens positioned himself slightly behind Layla, camera on his lap, eyes darting between the men and the open doorway. "I am called Kari Naim," the man said. "Once I had a longer name with many titles. None of that matters now." "You were with the Taliban until?" Layla asked, flipping open her notebook. "Until they were tired of me," he said. "Or until I was tired of them. The difference is not important. I fought when they told me to fight. I stopped when the fighting changed." "When the Americans left," she prompted. Naeem's smile faded. His injured arm twitched. "The Americans never really leave. They take their uniforms and their flags and their cameras, but they leave other things. Deals. Secrets. Holes in the ground. Holes." Jens echoed, frowning. Naeem ignored him. His eyes stayed on Layla. "Has your country known war, Kahar?" "Yes," Layla said quietly. "Not exactly like this. But yes." "Then you know what it is to have the dead under your feet," Naeem said. "To build houses on top of them. To pretend the ground is clean." He nodded to one of his men, who poured small glasses of tea and passed them around. Layla wrapped her hands around the hot glass, more for the warmth than the drink. The boy lingered in the doorway with his radio, eyes flicking between the valley and the tower, as if expecting something to appear on the ridge. "You didn't ask us here to talk about metaphors," Layla said. "Your message said you had proof of, what did you call it? Night work." Naeem's gaze hardened. "The night raids. The ones they still say did not happen. When I was with the Emirate, we buried men whose houses were never on any news. Old men, boys, whole families. Government, foreign soldiers, commandos that wore no flag. Different names. Same boots." Layla's pen scratched across the page. Jens's camera clicked once, the sound sharp in the cold air. One of Naeem's men glanced at him, hand drifting close to the AK at his side. "You say you have proof," Layla repeated calmly. "Documents? Bodies?" Naeem gestured to the floor. "Beneath us. The Soviets used this tower to watch the valley. The Americans used it to listen. They put machines in the walls, in the ground. They said it was to hear the enemy. But machines listen to everything. They record." Layla felt a prickle climb her spine. "You're saying there are recordings?" "Here. I am saying there is a room under this one," Naeem said. "Concrete inside concrete. They left in a hurry. Some doors they forgot to lock." Farid frowned. "And you never told the Emirate? Or the government?" "I told both," Naeem said flatly. "The Emirate said it was a trap. The government said it was a lie. Then some people came at night and told me to forget what I had seen. After that, my friends started to die." "Who were those people?" Layla asked. Naeem tilted his head, listening to the faint hiss of the boy's radio. Tell me, journalist from Bosnia, who do you think sends men in new boots, with no patches on their uniforms, driving cars with no plates? Silence settled between them, heavy as the mountain above. Outside, the wind picked up, tugging at the tower, making the old concrete creak. "We should see this room," Layla said at last. "If there are machines, records, anything, we need to document it before." The radio on the boy's hip crackled violently, loud enough to make them all flinch. A burst of overlapping voices flooded the tower, in Dari, Pashto, and something else, English, broken and distorted. It sounded like half a dozen different conversations spliced together, heavy with numbers and coordinates. The boy smacked the side of the radio, trying to bring the volume down. For a second, through the chaos, a single clear phrase cut through in English. "Visual on target structure, confirm journalists inside." The line went dead. No one spoke. Jens swallowed audibly. "What did that say?" he whispered. The boy looked at Naeem, eyes wide. "Uncle, the voice said." "I heard," Naeem said quietly. He turned back to Layla, and for the first time since they'd met, she saw something like fear in his eyes. "You were right to hurry. Bashir told you that. Now it may already be too late." They descended into the lower level by way of a narrow concrete stairwell half choked with debris. Naeem led, his injured arm pressed to his ribs, the other hand trailing along the wall. The boy came behind him with the radio, then Layla, Farid, and Jens. Above them, the brazier's light faded to a dull orange glow. "Are we sure this is a good idea?" Jens muttered. His voice bounced oddly in the stairwell. "If someone is coming, maybe we should, I don't know, not be underground?" "You can wait upstairs if you like," Farid said. "Be the first one they see." Jens gritted his teeth and kept walking. The air cooled as they went down, taking on a metallic tang, like old batteries and dust. At the bottom of the stairs, the passage leveled out into a low corridor. Bare bulbs hung from twisted wires in the ceiling, long burned out. A tangle of cables ran along one wall, disappearing into rusted metal boxes every few meters. "They left all this?" Layla whispered. "Some things are easier to bury than to move," Naeem said, "especially if you do not want people asking questions about them later." He stopped at a metal door bolted from the outside. The paint had peeled away in curls, revealing another language beneath, faded stenciled English, listening room 3. Jens lifted his camera. "Okay, that's definitely something." Naeem's man heaved the bolt aside. The door protested, but swung inward. The room beyond was lower than the one above, wide enough to march a squad through, but stuffed with equipment left to rot. Metal racks, consoles, tangled coils of colored cable. Dust lay thick over everything, disturbed only by a few sets of footprints old enough to have softened at the edges. In the center of the room stood a bank of machines that looked like a cross between a server stack and a filing cabinet, their panels studded with dead LEDs. Cassette-sized cartridges sat in labeled rows behind cloudy plastic. "This is where they listened," Naeem said. "To phone calls, radios, whoever used the network they built. They made their own web over these mountains, like a spider. Everything stuck to it." Layla stepped closer, eyes scanning the labels. Dates, times, coordinates, some in English, some in numbers only. She could feel Jens behind her, pointing his lens wherever her gaze landed. "Most of these are from years ago," she said. "Pre-withdrawal. Why would these matter now?" "Some stories are born old," Naeem replied. "They are still dangerous when they wake up." The boy's radio hissed again, softer this time, like a breath against the ear. A single word crackled through in Pashto. "Movement." "Who is that?" Farid demanded. Army? Taliban? Naeem didn't answer right away. He took the radio, turned the dial with practiced fingers, listened to the static, then turned it back. There are men on the road to the village, he said. Trucks, more than one. They are using the government frequency, but some of the voices are not from here. Layla's pulse jumped. They know we're here. That message we heard. Yes, Naeem said simply. Somebody told them. Maybe when you left Kabul. Maybe when you wrote to your editor. Maybe when you turned on your phones. We left them in the truck, Jens protested. Farid said. The truck is not the only thing that listens, Botcher, Naeem said. He tapped the wall with his knuckles. The hollow thump echoed down the corridor. These mountains remember. Old machines wake up when they hear familiar voices. It was the kind of thing that would have sounded like superstition in any other place. Down here, under concrete that had heard 30 years of secrets, it felt almost literal. Layla looked at the dead panels, the rows of tapes sleeping behind plastic. Can they still record? She asked. Can we prove anything with this? Naeem shook his head. The power is gone. The Americans took their generators in pieces. They thought the rest was useless. But some of these tapes, he gestured. I have listened. I used a battery, an old machine. I heard raids that no one admitted. I heard names of men who later died in accidents. Why didn't you show this to human rights groups? Jens blurted. UN, NGOs, anyone? Naeem's laugh was short and humorless. Some of them came. A few years ago. A woman from Europe, with hair like yours. He nodded at Layla. She went back to Kabul, then to Islamabad. There was a car crash on the way to the airport. No survivors. Layla swallowed. And you think? I think people who do not want to be seen have long arms, Naeem said. And I think they are listening again. Upstairs, a muffled sound rolled through the tower, like distant thunder. Dust sifted from the ceiling. Shelling, Farid breathed. Maybe they are just clearing the road, Naeem said. Or maybe they are reminding us that they have bigger guns. The boy tugged his sleeve. Uncle, Haji Bashir says some of the men are already in the village. They have uniforms like police, but different. He says they asked if the foreigners have arrived. Layla felt her mouth go dry. If they know we're here, we need to leave. Now. We can't be trapped in a dead Soviet bunker when whoever the hell this is shows up. Leave how? Naeem asked. The only road goes past the mosque. And if they came for me, they do not mind killing witnesses. Then call someone, Jens said. Your friend, your contact, the one who set this up. Tell them they invited us into a trap. They owe us a way out. For a moment, the room seemed to shrink, every breath loud in the stale air. I did not invite you, Naeem said quietly. I do not know who sent you that message. Come on, Farid snapped. You said. I said I had proof, Naeem cut in. I never asked for cameras. Someone else wanted you here. To see this. To die with it. I have spent too many years being used as a piece in other people's games. Silence dropped like a stone. Enough, Layla said, forcing her voice to stay level. Arguing doesn't change the fact that we're cornered. Another rumble shook the tower, closer this time. A long, low vibration shivered through the floor, rattling the dead machines. It sounded like artillery, too close to ignore, too distant to pinpoint. The boy's radio spat a final burst, entering target structure in 5. Then, impossibly, Another voice overlapped it, low and distorted, speaking in a language none of them recognized. A sound more than words, like something dredged up on an old tape. The hairs on Layla's arms stood up. The radio went dead. What was that? Jens whispered. Naeem stared at the silent device as if it had bitten him. Sometimes, he said slowly, these machines catch echoes, old things, conversations that already happened. My men say this valley repeats itself. It was interference, Farid snapped, but there was a tremor in his voice. Maybe, Naeem said. Or maybe someone else is still listening from far away, using wires nobody remembers. Another vibration rolled through the tower. Somewhere above, a man shouted. Then a single automatic burst cracked the air. Up, Naeem said. Now. They emerged into chaos. The brazier's fire was scattered across the floor, embers glowing in a spray. One of Naeem's men was slumped against the wall, hand pressed to his bloody thigh. The other crouched by the doorway, rifle ready, breathing hard. The door itself hung open, daylight carving a thin white wedge across the room. Who fired? Naeem demanded. Down the slope, the man at the door panted. They came from the west, not the road. 7, 8 men. Government uniforms, but newer, like they just came from Kabul. They fired warning shots above the tower. Warning shots. Farid echoed. That's generous. They shouted something, the man added. Said everyone inside must come out with hands on heads. Everyone? Layla asked. They know exactly where we are. Naeem moved to the doorway and risked a quick look outside. The boy hovered at his elbow, radio limp in his hand. What do you see? Jens whispered. 2 trucks below the tower, Naeem said. One armored, one not. No police markings. No village elders with them. This is not a visit. The cold seeped through Layla's jacket, filling the hollow under her ribs. She tried to imagine the report that might come out of this if they somehow survived. Unknown armed group raids remote valley. Former Taliban commander killed in unclear operation. Foreign journalists caught in crossfire. If they survived. They want you, she said to Naeem. And us. Why not just flatten the tower? Because they want to know what we've found, Naeem replied. Or who we've spoken to. He looked at her then, really looked, as if measuring something invisible. You could surrender, Jens said, voice shaking. Tell them we're just media. Let them take their tapes, whatever. We walk away. Naeem shook his head. They do not trust promises anymore. Not since too many phones started recording. They prefer cleaner endings. Outside, a megaphone crackled to life. A voice spoke in Dari, official and flat. You in the tower. Come out slowly, unarmed. We are conducting a security operation. Failure to comply will be treated as hostility. Farid's shoulders sagged. Security operation. Always the same words. We have to decide, Layla said. If we resist, they'll storm the place. If we walk out, maybe they just arrest us, rough us up, deport us. But if we hide where? Jens snapped. In the ghost room with the dead tapes? Layla's eyes fell to the stairwell. The memory of that overlapping radio voice flickered in her mind. Past and present, layered and distorted. Naeem, she said, those tapes. The recordings. Are there any that mention Dori Isaiah by name? He blinked at the shift in topic. Yes. A few. Why? Because if these people are what you think they didn't come all this way just for you, she said. They came to erase something. If we walk out and vanish, maybe someone asks a few questions. If we walk out with proof, someone has to lie harder. Jens stared at her. You're suggesting we negotiate with evidence? I'm suggesting we make it as expensive as possible to make us disappear, she said. Expensive for who? Farid muttered. The ones giving the orders won't pay anything. Another burst of gunfire cracked outside, shorter this time. A woman's scream floated faintly up from the village, cut off too quickly. Naeem's face tightened. They're moving through the houses. They'll use the villagers as leverage, Farid said quietly. Say we're putting them at risk by staying here. They already are at risk, Naeem said. They were the moment you arrived. Maybe before. He looked at the boy. Go downstairs. Bring me one tape from the Durree Isaiah shelf. The one from the night of the raid on the old school. The boy hesitated. Uncle, if they come in while I'm— Go, Naeem said, softer now. You are smaller than all of us. They will not aim at you first. The boy ran. The loudspeaker voice came again. You have 2 minutes. Then we will enter by force. Layla dragged in a breath that felt like winter knives. Okay. Here's what we do. We go down, grab whatever we can carry that proves something happened here. Names, dates, coordinates. We come back up. We walk out together, hands raised. We say we are journalists. We have sent copies of everything already. Even if it's a bluff. If they still want to kill us, they will. But they will have to do it knowing there's a chance someone else will publish. They will assume you are lying, Naeem said. Maybe, she said. But hesitation buys time. Time for the villagers to scatter. Time for— She didn't finish. The boy burst back into the room, out of breath, clutching a black cartridge in both hands. His eyes were huge. There is someone talking, he gasped. Down there. But the power is off. The machines are dead. What do you mean? Jens said, voice thin. I heard a voice, the boy insisted. On the tape machine. Speaking English. Saying the same thing as before. About the tower. About us. Farid swore under his breath. He's scared. That room echoes like— Enough, Layla snapped. Her nerves felt like exposed wires. Hand it to me. The cartridge was colder than it should have been. A tiny label on its edge read, Des Valley, 04-23/03-217. 23 March, Layla murmured. 2:17 a.m. What year? The year the school roof collapsed, Naeem said. Officially, because of heavy snow. Unofficially. He trailed off. Outside, an engine revved. Metal clanged. They were running out of time. Whatever that kid heard, we don't have a way to play this now, Farid said. It's just plastic in your hand. Not if I take a picture of it with the tower in the background, Jens said suddenly. His voice steadied, some part of him snapping into professional focus. Label readable. Coordinates tagged. 3 of us witness it. If they make us delete it, that's a story on its own. Layla met his eyes. For the first time since they'd left Kabul, he looked like more than a tourist with a death wish. Do it, she said. They stepped to the doorway. Jens framed the cartridge against the cracked lip of the tower, the valley and the trucks blurred behind it. His camera clicked once, twice, 3 times. A shout rose from below. Someone had seen them. Now we go, Naeem said. They descended the slope together, hands raised, weapons slung on backs with muzzles pointed down. The cold bit into Layla's fingertips where they gripped the cartridge. The trucks grew larger, their paint too clean for the road, their number plates conveniently absent. Men fanned out in a shallow arc, rifles level, faces masked. Their uniforms were a mix of Afghan National Army, police, and something else. Tactical gear that didn't fit quite right, patches missing, eyes hidden behind cheap sunglasses despite the flat light. "Stop there!" the man with the megaphone called. His Dari was clean cobble, but his accent underneath was something else. "Who is in charge?" "I am," Layla heard herself say before anyone else could. Her voice carried down the slope, steadier than she felt. "We are journalists. We have identification." "Put it on the ground," the man said. "All devices, cameras, phones, anything that records." Jens flinched, but he unslung his camera and knelt. Farid followed, placing his phone beside it. Layla held up the cartridge. "This is not a camera," she said. "This is something you left here years ago. We have already photographed it. We have already sent the pictures. If anything happens to us, people will ask why you came all this way to collect your trash." For a moment, the only sound was the wind. The man with the megaphone lowered it. His sunglasses hid his eyes, but Layla could feel his stare. "You think you understand what this place is," he said quietly, switching to English now. "You don't. You think a picture changes anything." "Sometimes it does," Layla replied in English too. "Sometimes it makes it harder to deny." The man's jaw clenched. Then, to her surprise, he laughed. It was short and harsh, but it was a laugh. "Bring them down," he told his men in Dari. "Search them. No bruises where cameras can see." Rough hands dragged them the rest of the way. They were patted down, IDs taken, phones seized. Someone pulled the cartridge from Layla's fingers, turning it over with a curiosity that made her stomach twist. "You came for this?" she asked in English. "We came to check an old wound," the man said. "Sometimes, if you leave the poison in, it spreads. Sometimes, if you pull it out, you bleed to death." "That sounds like a confession," Layla said. He tilted his head. For a second, she thought he might hit her. Instead, he leaned closer, so only she could hear. "Tell your editor in London that mountains echo," he said. "Sometimes they repeat themselves. The same mistakes, the same operations, the same stories. If she is smart, she will forget about this valley." He straightened, mask back in place. "You will be escorted to Kabul," he announced in Dari. "For your safety." They were shoved into the back of the softer-skinned truck, wrists loosely tied with plastic cuffs. Through a crack in the metal, Layla saw Naeem being pushed toward the armored vehicle, his injured arm jostled. He didn't look back. As they pulled away, the village shrank behind them. Smoke still rose from a few houses. No bodies lay in the open where she could see them. That didn't comfort her. Jens shifted beside her. "We're not dead," he whispered, as if afraid to jinx it. "Not yet," Farid said. Layla focused on the small screen of Jens's camera where it jut out of his jacket pocket. At some point in the chaos, he'd managed to slip the memory card out, tucking it into the lining of his coat. The screen was cracked, the battery low, but one thumbnail image still glowed. The cartridge, its label sharp, the tower looming behind it. The truck hit a rut. The image flickered. For a split second, the thumbnail changed. The tower was still there, but the sky above it was darker, lit from below by brief, unnatural flashes. Tiny figures ran along the ridge. A helicopter hovered half out of frame, its spotlight drawn like a white knife. Then the image snapped back to what it had been before. "Did you see that?" Jens breathed. "See what?" Farid asked. "Nothing," Layla said quickly. Her heart hammered in her throat. "An artifact. Glitch." The mountains rolled by, indifferent. Somewhere behind them, concrete rooms sat in the dark, filled with dead machines and tapes that might or might not ever be heard again. Somewhere ahead, in Kabul or London or nowhere at all, an editor would open an email with too many redactions and too few answers. Later, when she was safely back in a hotel room with decent Wi-Fi and a door that locked properly, Layla would scroll through the images on Jens's card, frame by frame. She'd find the photo of the cartridge, crisp and ordinary. She'd stare at the metadata, the GPS tags, the perfectly normal timestamps. She would never find the other version of the picture, the one with the helicopter and the flashes, the one that showed a night raid that officially never happened but matched almost exactly the date and time on the tape's label. Rationally, she'd tell herself it had been shock, exhaustion, her brain stitching old stories over new images. Rationally, there was no way a camera could develop someone else's memory. Still, every time her phone rang with an unknown number after that, every time she walked under a camera fixed high on a wall, every time she heard the distant thump of rotor blades in a news clip, she'd feel that same cold thread run down her spine. Mountains echoed. Naeem had said. Maybe machines did too. Maybe, once they'd listened long enough, they learned how to whisper back.